This week in the Rural Challenge for the Dibley Diaries, I want to think about water that is often in the wrong place within the fabric of a church building. And this can be a real issue with the ancient buildings that we look after in the countryside. We can have terrible rising damp. These buildings were built without any damp courses and often without very good foundations, so rising damp can be a real problem, especially if the water table is changing in a place. We can have all sorts of problem with water coming up from the soil into the building. We can have water travelling in the opposite direction, so water from the roof which is coming in. You don't always need a hole in the roof for this to happen. If your gutters are blocked, or if there's a problem with your valley in a roof which has lead work, then if that part where there's a lead work gully gets over full because the gutters might be blocked or something, then the water's just going to come in over the side of the leadwork, and you may end up in a church service, have a storm, and then there's actually water coming into the building. You can have problems with the different porosity and type of stones in the building as well. Worst case scenario, someone has cemented or concreted over a bit of your church building, a wall. That will mean that the stone can't breathe. That will make terrible damp problems and will be terrible for the stone. You might have concrete mortar as well, or cement mortar. That means that actually those joints can't breathe, or the whole wall can't breathe properly. So that is also really not good at all. Or you may end up with the most insidious of these issues, which is hidden, because most of the time it's not a problem, but there are some stone memorials that are in the floor of churches which have a different sort of porosity and absorbency of the water in them, and in the right weather conditions they will sweat water out of them, and they can turn into a little skating rink because they're so wet, in particular humidity conditions, or if they're it's just the weather conditions and the warmth of the stone in the building and the damp and all the rest of it. So you can be trying to walk down your aisle and suddenly come across a really slippery wet stone that you weren't expecting, and you have to be really careful with it. So just wanted to say water and ancient buildings, well, it's a very complex relationship. In Thought for the Week, this week we're thinking about John chapter 4, which is the encounter between Jesus and the Samaritan woman at the well, and there's quite a lot of things to say about this. It's actually a really long passage to read in the Bible. So Jesus and his disciples are travelling through an area and they come to a well. It's the middle of the day. Jesus sits by the well. His disciples go off to find food. A woman comes with a water jar to collect water from the well, which speaks volumes about the fact that she didn't want to do that in the cool of the day when all the other women had been there. Jesus and this woman have this conversation. He asks her for a drink, which is a huge surprise because Samaritans and Jews, the Jews won't drink out of the same vessels as Samaritans, so they have this kind of theological discussion about that. They talk about water, and Jesus says, I have water to drink which nobody has. I can give you this water. She asks for it, and Jesus talks about the fact that in the water that he has to give to people will become a spring in them of water of eternal life. Become a spring in them of water for eternal life. Then the woman, the disciples come back, they're scandalised that Jesus is talking to a woman. The woman leaves her water jar, goes and tells everybody in the town what's happened in this encounter. Particularly, they have a discussion earlier on about her not having a husband, and the kind of stuff that's happened to her with a series of men in her life. And because of that, she goes and tells the town, Jesus told me everything that I ever did or ever happened to me. Jesus and the disciples go and stay in the town, even though it's a Samaritan town, and then all the people in the town believe in Jesus. So it's this kind of great long passage about the story of this woman, this encounter with Jesus, the cultural things, all sorts of things. And I wonder if you have a favourite part of that passage. If you had a favourite part of that passage, what would it be? Interesting, isn't it? So some people have a favourite part of that passage. This week, my favourite part of that passage is about Jesus saying that the water will spring up in people to be a spring of eternal life. That is an amazing thing. That is an amazing thing for Jesus to say. How does that enact in our own lives? What does that mean for us? What could that mean for us? Relatively recently, I learnt that one of the really important things that happened during the Underground Railroad time in America's history is that people would leave a bucket of water on their back porch and a cup. The bucket would be covered with a cloth or a lid, something similar. And so enslaved people who were running away from enslavement would be able to see that there was water there because they were really thirsty. They They didn't have anything with them. They wouldn't have a cup or anything. So they would be able to go onto a back porch. They would be able to drink from the cup and leave the cup and the bucket of water there for the next person who needed it. And it's that kind of small act of defiant hope that was being the spring of water for those people. It was being the spring of water for those people. What does it mean for us to do something in this time when we hear the news, it's so full of death? What does it mean for us to be able to offer the water of life to people from our spring of the water of life that is welling up in us as Christians? What do we do with that? We understand all the imagery that Jesus is using, and we know that people can't live without water for very long. So how can we be giving people something to drink? How can we be giving people something, a cup of water, a cup of hope, a cup of life? I think that's a challenge for this week. For me especially, is actually, I believe that Jesus has made this water of life spring up in me. How can I share that good water of life with people in amongst all the news of death and awful things that are happening? I'm not going to say anything about the war in the Middle East at the moment because I am wildly unqualified to speak about that, but I would encourage you to look at the content from the Church of England about that, in particular Bishop Gooley's prayer, some of the background to that, but do use the resources there that are available to you to pray and to think about what's happening there and think about how the water of life can spring up in those situations of death and suffering. The Dibley moment of the week this week is about something which happened near one of my church buildings. So by the front gate of this church building there was a little tiny stream culvert. Water, there were springs in a neighbour's garden and springs that ran under the church building. They met in this tiny little culvert place which was open to the elements. It was about 3 feet by 2 feet, and people used to lose things in that bit. People used to drop things. I know at some point people's car keys had gone in it, various people dropped gloves and things, but on one occasion a small child who had been very interested in this little piece of running water lost their flip-flop in it, so they ended up with just one flip-flop left. The flip-flop did not appear in the pond which the little stream ran into, nor into the river either. The flip-flop was eaten by the little bit of the stream outside the church building, so everybody needed to be really careful of that little bit of stream because it could carry things to we didn't know where. Well, that's it for the Dibley Diaries for this week. I pray that you and your village, however large or small, have a really blessed week where you are all full of the water of life.